All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Fred Abbott. I'm the Diversity Program Manager at the Ecological Society of America. I get to run the day-to-day activities of the SEEDS program. If this is the first time you're hearing about SEEDS, we're a mentoring program that's been run for 24 years to increase underrepresented groups within the field of ecology, and not only about increasing that representation, but actually giving them the skills they need to lead within the field. So we are very excited about hosting this panel tonight. It's the Diversity and Ecology Careers panel. So all of our panels are from a unique area of ecology. They're all ecologists that work in different fields. We're very excited about hosting this event for the first time. This is the first time we've held a career panel virtually. So we're excited about that. Also with me from SEEDS is Esberi Cordova Ortiz. She's the Diversity Program Assistant. She's actually going to be monitoring the channel, the chat. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, if you don't feel comfortable turning on your webcam, that is fine. This conversation is actually being recorded and will be shared within the SEEDS community later on. In the meantime, if you don't feel comfortable with that, just let us know. You can post your questions in the chat as well, and we can keep track of you that way. We want this to be a discussion, not a lecture. So please feel free to participate at any point if you like. So SEEDS has been doing this for 24 years. This is the first year we're doing it virtually, as with many other programs. But we're very excited about this opportunity. So welcome and thank you for spending an evening with us. We're hoping that you take home the message that ecology is as diverse as the science that it is. It's the most diverse science of all. And we want our science to represent the citizenship that it represents, which is actually at a global scale. So that's our mission. That's what we want to achieve. And with us, we actually have 5 of our SEEDS finest family members that are going to be sharing their experiences with you. So please feel free to give them a welcome and also ask them as many questions as you'd like. We're very excited to host this. So with that being said, I'm actually going to call on our panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm actually going to start with Michelle.
All right, awesome. I'm so happy to be here. I love doing stuff with ESA, so I'm just happy to continuously give back to other folks who are trying to either get into this field or are just exploring other options. So my name is Michelle Nelson. I currently work for Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission as the Community Garden Program Manager, and I am a SEEDS alum. I think like 2, 3, 4 times over for trips. And I just keep getting pulled back in. So I love it. I love the community, and I'm happy to be here to share some of my experiences.
Well, welcome, Michelle. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to jump over to Adriana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Romero-Olivares. I'm an assistant professor at New Mexico State University, and I am a microbial ecologist. I study how microbes respond and adapt to climate change, and I do a combination of bioinformatics with field research, with microbiology research. And I was born and raised in Mexico, but I've been living in the US for the past 10 years. Y también hablo español.
Bienvenida. Gracias, Adriana. So I'm going to jump over to Jeremy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeremy Strickland. Currently, I'm the manager of education and community outreach with Open Lands, which is a nonprofit located in Chicago. We're one of the largest and oldest metropolitan conservation organizations in the nation. Prior to returning to Chicago, where I'm originally from, I worked as a federal wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 10 years. And then prior to that, I did a turtle graduate program at Iowa State University. And then prior to that, proud to say that I worked for a couple years for the Ecological Society of America, kind of playing a similar role like Fred is doing. So kudos to Fred and the rest of the ESA staff for putting this together. So like I said, I worked for them, more than a decade ago, and they just can't seem to get rid of me, or vice versa. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm going to jump over to Sarah now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Anderson, and I am an ecologist with the U.S. Forest Service. I'm based here in DC and work on in the branch of the Forest Service that manages all the national forests and grasslands. So the public lands, 193 million acres, they are yours, they're mine, they're all of ours. And my job with that is really to, I work as a landscape scale ecologist, trying to make sure all these lands stay healthy, trying to keep track of all the stressors, all the different things that are going on those landscapes. You may have heard of some wildfires this past fall. That's what I try to keep track of. And then the other thing that we do that I do in relation to that is on the restoration and recovery side, part of our national reforestation program. And so we are currently on starting a 10-year plan to ramp up and try to reforest some of these areas that have been, so figuring out where to plant trees, where to plant the right trees and at the right time and in the right place. And so it's great work. But prior to that, I have done a couple different types of fellowships, one of which was on the Hill, one was at the Forest Service, which led to my current position. And before that, earned my Ph.D. at Washington State University, studying ecosystem ecology and looking at sources of air pollution and how they can stress ecosystems. And so it's been a long journey being a first generation college student, but it's been exciting to just kind of take it one step at a time, and who knows what's next. Ready to be here with you all. I love the SEEDS program. You're great people, fun times, even when we have, we aren't all together in the same place, exchanging jokes and banter back and forth. But it's good to have you all here. I can't wait to hear your questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sarah. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Tim Nuttall, Dr. Tim Nuttall.
Osionigana, Timakalisiki Dawado, Ichoda Chalagi Alawama Kaylee, Anikalohi Kaylee, Pittsburgh Chinela, Civil and Environmental Consultants, Ugawi Yuhi, Dawi Dalistano Neho. So that was Cherokee language. My name is Tim Nuttall. I'm a member of the Cherokee, the Ichoda Cherokee Tribe of Alabama, a member of the Wind Clan. I live in Pittsburgh, and I'm a principal at Civil and Environmental Consultants, also located in Pittsburgh. Before that, I was associate professor at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, one of the most awkwardly named universities originally in the state of Pennsylvania, town of Indiana. I helped start a SEEDS chapter there. I've been involved with SEEDS for a while as a host of a SEEDS Spur site, and had a number of REU, research experience for undergraduate students, that was associated with that. And currently with ESA, I am on the board of professional certification.
Awesome. Amazing work by all of you. Very excited to host you tonight. This, again, I'll repeat for those that have joined the call since we started, is a discussion. We want you to participate in the conversation. The conversation will be moderated by yours truly, but in the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. And it's actually a very basic yet very important question for all of you. And I want all of you to take a minute to respond to this is, why did you choose the science of ecology as your choice, like as your career choice?
I can go first, Fred, if that's okay.
That's okay. That's perfect.
Okay. Well, it's kind of like, the career trajectory. There's no straight path. So if any of you are looking for a straight path, good luck. But growing up poor in Chicago, coming from some underserved communities, like my parents couldn't afford to put me in like summer camps and, all those fancy after schools programs. Because at that time, I'm putting a date with my age, but in the 90s, a lot of those programs you had to pay for or like volunteer to work with a zoo and aquarium or anything like that. And so I couldn't afford to do that. So I just wander off to the local beaches and stuff like that. And I was just disheartened because a lot of the local beaches in Chicago would be closed in the summer just due to like algae blooms, contamination, pollution, and stuff like that. And so, that's kind of what convinced me to say, I got to do something for the world, and particularly in some of these underserved communities. So that inspired me to pursue a degree in natural resources with a particular emphasis in conservation management. And then, the rest is kind of history, not to get too far along lines, but having a good mentor or coach earlier in life that told me what I was not so good at, and that also helped, put me on the right path as well. But I know Fred might have an opportunity to talk about mentors later down the line, so I'm not going to jump into that. So, having that disconnection in my local community to nature and science and clean air and clean water, that's what inspired me to dig deeper and look further and pursue a degree in it.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's funny, Jeremy, I had a lot of the very similar characteristics that got me interested in ecology in a very different location. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, very rural, very few people, still that way, but it was the same things. We had about 3 acres that was on a river, and it was, seeing the water pollution, seeing, the runoff from farm fields, and knowing that was making the place that I lived and loved to be in, it was, damaging it. And so wanting to understand that, wanting to help fix those types of problems, find solutions. And in high school, actually, we had a freshwater ecology course where we would go out in the mud bus. It was the school bus, the oldest school bus in the fleet. So we could just get it as muddy as possible with our hip waders. And we would go into streams and lakes and do sampling. And then all of our data as high school students was then going to the local DNR, Department of Natural Resources, to help manage which areas needed the most attention. And it was loving getting outside, getting to literally get in the mud. That it wasn't until a couple of years later, though, that I realized, wait, I want to go back and do more of that, and then started following that.
I can go next.
Okay.
Oh, you want to go, Michelle?
No, go ahead. I saw a couple of us had unmuted, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I guess my story's kind of the same, a little bit of Jeremy and a little bit of Sarah. It's very convoluted, that's for sure. I grew up in a big city in Mexico, in a poor neighborhood. Medium poor, I wouldn't say poor. But the thing is that at a very young age, I became very aware of just the trash in the streets and, just the pollution around me. And it was because of one class that I took in elementary school where they brought up pollution. I was like, it looks like where I live is very polluted. So I became kind of concerned about the pollution, and I had no access to nature growing up, but I kind of looked up to the landscapes that I saw on TV, and I started to become interested in taking care of plants and animals, but I wasn't really sure what that meant, and I wasn't until high school that I decided that I was going to study biology, and it was towards the very end of high school. I was actually considering not attending college because, well, none of my parents went to college. I didn't really know any scientists. I was just very confused. I didn't really know what to do. And it was a high school professor that told me, it looks like you're good at biology and you care about plants and animals. So I would definitely encourage you to go to college and study biology. And my mom was very supportive of me going to college. She was just like, you estudia algo, not really understanding what. She just wanted me to go to college. And then once in college, things continued to be very confusing. I didn't really know what I was doing in college. I didn't really know what I was doing in biology, but as I started to move forward in my degree, I started to chat with professors and some other people. And then I decided that, I wanted to be a professor because I liked biology, I liked teaching, I liked research. And I would say up until this day, I still feel like it's kind of convoluted and I'm not really sure what the future holds for me. I just know that I like ecology and I like taking care of the environment.
I grew up in a very rural area, and my interest in ecology was just coming from spending a lot of time. My parents took me hunting and fishing when I was, I don't know how young, since forever. And so that was kind of my interest. I didn't know you could do it for a job. And so, but I was interested in the environment in high school, doing some reports on, like, the Amazon was where ecology happened, right? And so just kind of went to a science program at Michigan State called Lyman Briggs School, which is a great, very broad exposure to different sciences. And so that's when a guy on my floor said, hey, you should look into fisheries and wildlife. And so I did, and I got a job in a fisheries lab. And I didn't know if I wanted to do kind of biology work or more policy work. And I went on a trip, a field trip with some of the graduate students. We were using electrofishing to catch trout, huge, enormous trout up in beautiful rivers in northern Michigan. And that was just, I'm like, okay, I'm sold. This is definitely it. It was so much fun to do that kind of field work. And so that's what got me into ecology.
So I am like a lot of the other panelists. I just remember that I guess now my career has kind of come full circle, because a couple of my experiences from when I was younger definitely shaped my interest and kind of even shaped the position I'm in now. So my focus is more so in agroecology, I guess, so agricultural systems. But I work for an organization that we work in parks. So very much to what Sarah was just talking, or what Sarah shared in her introduction. You know, when I was younger, we would go to nature centers and I would just get engulfed in, you know, looking at what's in the stream. Oh, there goes the random crayfish. Oh, you know, a little bit apprehensive, but just always ready to dive in and always ready to see what I could see. And I'm the same person now. Like, I love when I go out and I do a community garden inspection, but I'm at a park. So I'm looking at birds all over the place. I'm looking at what's growing in different community garden plots. So, I mean, I think the connections of just everything really encouraged me and kept me in the field of ecology. And there's always something new. I think that's what I love about it. And I can always meet someone or connect with someone to just, yeah, I don't just connect, which is weird, but I think that's the best part of it. So yeah, I started in nature centers and playing outside, climbing trees, having calluses on my hands. And that was something that honestly, I just knew that I wanted to have a career that allowed me to be like 40-60 indoors and outdoors, 60% outdoors, really. And so even if that's all you know about your career, that will tell you a lot about where your placement will be in the world. So yeah, I'm really excited to share more and happy to hear a little bit from the panelists already.
Awesome. That was a great response by all of you to the first question. So now the jitters are gone. Now we really dive into this. But Michelle, you've said it perfectly. Connection. Ecology is the science of interactions. It's a science of connections. And I think that the one thing that I've learned in my position over the last 10 years of managing a national program is exactly that. I can take people that come from very unique, very different backgrounds, but yet they all share that same passion for the environment, for feeling connected to everyone. Empathy is definitely a part of ecology as a science. You know, you worry about how other people are being affected by the changes that we are causing onto this, you know, one planet that we live on. So that's amazing. Thank you. First response right out of the bat. I really do appreciate that. For the panelists, I'm actually going to switch the order of the questions a little bit, and I'm jumping to one that I think is of extreme importance, and that is being an ecologist, working in a field, and each of you work in a unique field of ecology, is that what you had expected? when you started your career? Like you said that you wanted to be an ecologist, and you ended up in academia and private sector and nonprofit. Was it what you were expecting?
Absolutely not. But in the dream world, I mean, I didn't have that confidence. Not having role models at an earlier age, growing up in a single family household, growing up poor. I never thought I can like go to college other than play sports. So it was like a dream. And I thought that some of the stuff that I'd be doing like volunteering, like in extracurricular activities. So yeah, no, not at all. I thought like my connection to ecology would have been pursuing a career at PetSmart. Yes, PetSmart, where I was taking water samples for aquariums. And I think many of you probably been to a PetSmart or a Petco, but they had me at a young age kind of managing like the aquarium section. And I was much younger than my supervisors and stuff like that, all because I like to play in the water and take water samples and see what color it turns and put it up against a chart. So I use that to beefing up my resume to get me in college, but absolutely not. But in a dream world, it was something that I thought that never in my wildest dreams that I'd be able to do some of the cool things and get paid to play. That's kind of like a lot of us ecologists look at our nature of our work. We aren't the highest paid folks, but for a lot of us, life is precious, so precious that it's happiness and comfort and peace of mind and that prevails over, no offense if anybody's in corporate America, but my peace of mind and my sanity is more important than, having $1 million check. It would be nice, but I don't think I'm going to get to that $1 million check in my role. But we live comfortably, we have fun, we travel, we meet people, and then we leave lasting impressions for our work. So I think us realizing that we're leaving the world in a better place per se, I think that that's equally as rewarding, because if our ancestors would have taken care of the land in the shape that we are, I'm just saying we as the universe right now, we wouldn't be around to enjoy these resources now. So with that being said, I'll shut up and turn it over to others.
That I would say yes and no. I think in some aspects, being an ecologist, I continuously come back to my ecology frame of mind, which is such a strong foundation of anything I tackle at work. Because I work in a little bit of a different capacity than probably some of the other like research intensive ecologists. But I would say yes and no. I get to go out and kind of get paid to play, like what Jeremy said. So that's a major bonus. And then I guess when I was in undergrad, I studied environmental science. And so I had plans that I was going to go be a Fed and just be happy working for EPA. And I was totally bamboozled, like with my college career track. It put me on a completely different track. So I kind of had to be flexible. But being flexible really led me down a completely new path of ecology, because that's how I had my first SEEDS experience in Puerto Rico. So it just opened my eyes up to other opportunities besides being incredibly focused, like being just strictly an entomologist or just being strictly like a weed scientist, or I was able to see how all those things correlated. And then with my job, I work with a lot of people. And so bringing people into the mix is always changes the game. So yes and no for me.
Okay. No, actually growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. Clearly, I'm not a lawyer right now. And then I wanted to be an anthropologist. And then I realized what that entailed, and I didn't want to do that anymore either. And so I really stumbled into ecology because it was a place where I could take all the pieces of all the subjects that I loved in the sciences, the chemistry, the physics, the biology, the you know, the physiology of plants and animals, and pull it all together to answer any question, and think about any question, you know, what does it mean right here? But then like, what's the bigger context about it, and start thinking about it in that way. And I loved that. And so I kind of fell into ecology that way. And then as I proceeded through school and my degrees, you know, you kind of see the ecologists you see, you know, we didn't see it. I don't think there's an ecologist in my hometown. Like, it just isn't a thing. So the first ecologists you see are professors. And so, you know, you kind of think, was that where I'm going? But every step of the way, I've learned so much more about what an ecologist can be. And then being like, ooh, let me go try that. Let me go try that. Like, and the knowledge and skills and just the things that make an ecologist really transfer and are really useful in so many places that really, you know, you can be an ecologist in a lot of places that, you know, I never thought I would be. For a year, I was an ecologist on the Hill. And so I was, you know, writing legislation for a senator, like as an ecologist. And a lot of things that are just, you know, I never could have dreamed of doing. And then I did it. And so it's just, yeah, just trying to figure out what the next best step always is, and giving new things a try.
Yeah, for me, the answer is definitely no. As I mentioned, when I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And even when I started my career as a biologist, I didn't really know that I was going to end up being an ecologist. And actually, this relates to the question that Tanika asked. How did you decide what you wanted to study in grad school? It's a really long story, but during the first few years of my bachelor's degree, I thought I wanted to go into biomedical research, but then after doing an REU in a biomedical lab, I decided that was definitely not for me. And my very last year of college, I just decided that I needed to do something else, and I didn't really know what that was. And I kind of like went back to what I knew that I liked from the very beginning, which was, you know, like plants and animals, which is kind of funny that now I don't really work with plants or animals. But, you know, I ended up sort of like redirecting myself to the field of ecology. And I guess I never in 100 years, I thought I was going to be doing what I do. I kind of knew that I wanted to be a professor kind of like halfway of my college degree, but it was very unclear. It's just really strange. I was like, oh, I like what my professor's life looks like, teaching and just chatting about research. And I was like, I want to do that, but I didn't really understand exactly what it was to be in academia until I was in grad school.
I thought that ecology was, when I was first, you know, looking into declaring that as a major, which was, I was actually going into a fisheries and wildlife management program as an undergraduate, and my master's is also in wildlife ecology and management. But when I was looking at the curriculum, I thought all I wanted to do was take the ecology classes, right? So I wanted to say, oh, I get to take the forest vegetation class where I learn about plants, and I get to take the ornithology class where I get to learn about birds, and then I get to take the mammalogy course where I get to learn about mammals, and then I get to take, you know, all of these and all I wanted to do is learn about everything every living animal or plant on the planet. And oh, I got to see these management classes. Oh, I mean, what's management? And, you know, that's like the wildlife management, the upland management, the forest management, the wetland management. And that's where you start learning about ecosystems and how we intervene in them to shape them to be in a certain condition that we want to have. And so I remember that first class I took that was a forest vegetation class, also known as dendrology. And I would, you know, Michigan State has a beautiful campus with lots of woodlots that are forests that are protected. They have fences around some of them so that deer can't get in and eat everything. And just having this feeling like I understood the forest in a different way because I knew the names of everything. I knew that this was, and I was telling you a story, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a black maple, and it's here because it's wetter, and over there's a ridge, and it's a different, there's sugar maple up there. And I just felt like suddenly I was hearing these stories that were there all along, but I could understand them for the first time. And just today, I was at a site. It's a site, it's an eco-village. They're trying to build a co-housing community. It's kind of condos meets commune. And they hired me as a consultant to engage in the ecological planning. So I was out on the site and I was reading the forest, but this time with a diagnostic lens about, okay, what's here now? What's going on? What's the history? This is strange. Why is there so many of white oaks and so few hickories? Why is this Norway spruce here? What invasive species are here? And I'm doing this to try to understand how I can blend the new site into the existing context. And another site was, there was more invasive species or more ornamentals. So it was really interesting. I'm just reflecting on that as I was listening to the other panelists. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this totally full circle where, in learning about all of the species, I was able to, although I was not interested in that initially, that's what I just thought I was going to be a naturalist. I was going to know everything about plants and animals. It became more about how they interrelate to each other. And now I'm using both of those together to try to shape this new place where people are going to live in hopefully harmony with nature based on the surrounding context, and kind of help correct some wrongs and shape the community into something that's more holistic and functional.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Did everybody get to respond to that question? Yes. Okay. I'm gonna jump now because I'm monitoring the chat as well. Let's jump to something a bit different. Let's travel back in time with me a little bit to when you were an undergraduate, and let's give our participants a little bit of a backtrack on that. What would be something that you could change if you were to go back to your undergraduate or graduate degree? What would be something that you would like to change that would have prepared you better for this? And I'm talking about courses, trainings, gap years.
I 100% wish I would have taken a gap year between my undergrad and graduate program. I went straight through undergrad to PhD. I graduated in 2010 from undergrad, and the 2008 recession was still real hard. Real hardcore. And there was not a whole lot of jobs of any sort. So it was like, grad school, I guess. That's not the right reason to go to grad school. It's not the best reason, at least. It worked. I mean, it worked out. I'm okay. Like, I got a job in life, and like we're doing good. But a much better reason is like when you have something you I think it's Adriana put in the chat that you want something to achieve something, that there's either a question you're really interested in, or there's a skill that you want to get, or there's some sort of knowledge you want to obtain. I was just going to go, which is not a great reason. So I wish I would have taken a gap year and figured myself out a little bit more, and also gotten real world experience. It's how do things really work in the real world is really important, and just as having a job. And then the other thing that I wished I would have done differently in grad school is that I wished I would have switched programs. I had an advisor not get along with particularly well, and I knew that very early on, and I did not listen to that. I toughed it out, and I did finish, but it was harder than it needed to be. And that is one of my biggest regrets, is I had an opportunity to switch and I didn't take it. And so, there's something to be said for listening to that voice inside of you when something says, this sucks. And you know, you weigh the pros and cons, and I wish I would have listened to that little voice, because you know, you do the tabulation on paper and it doesn't always work out to what your gut says, but sometimes you should just listen to your gut. And I still regret that. I think I kind of would have ended up in the same spot eventually, but probably a little bit faster and with a lot less heartache.
That's some great advice, Sarah. Thank you.
Can I go next?
Yes.
Yeah, Sarah, that was really, really powerful. Thanks for sharing. I'd say that gap year was probably, or 2 years was the best for me, because, you know, that gap period is where I found ESA and SEEDS. And so had I not taken that gap year, that, and I had a really good mentor who I thought, you know, I wanted to work on a farm. I became fascinated with animals, and I thought that, like, okay, since I'm out of PetSmart now, I can work on farm, and that's my way of working with animals. And I was applying for grad school, and I had a mentor that was honest with me, and right away he let me know that, nah, you're not ready for it yet. But I mean, that's what it's about, having someone who has your back and best interest at heart to give honest, constructive criticism. And so if you're not ready, again, there's no straight and narrow path. I feel that supplementing the classroom experience with real world, some of you are saying, with hands-on experience, I think that makes you just as marketable, because I wasn't the brightest bulb on the tree. Every time I take the GRE, I'd get a lower score. And just, you're talking about what that might do to someone's confidence. But as far as with the graduate school or with an employer, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And networking is priceless. Don't be afraid to apply, because you'll be surprised how many opportunities might stumble across your way for programs or opportunities where they just didn't get enough applicants. So it's good to be lucky and smart sometime. But yeah, just, you got to do what's best for you and be honest with yourself. Yeah.
I wish I would have done a study abroad. I was thinking that, you know, oh, I don't have any regrets. You know, I had gap years sort of by default, because I just finished at weird times. Like I graduated like undergraduate in December. So I had, you know, some jobs in labs and at Department of Agriculture until I got into graduate school. And then I sort of like took me forever to finish my master's thesis. So I was just working at the university as the ornithological atlas coordinator until I just decided to move and work for my friend and his graduate research before I got into my own doctoral program. But I think that study abroad, and the reason I didn't do it was because I always thought I couldn't afford it. So I grew up, you know, like several of the other folks, maybe all of the other analysts, you know, very poor, and didn't know where, you know, how I was going to pay for college every semester. But it worked out. I was blessed to have, you know, financial aid and work study and stuff, and I'm very grateful for that. And that was provided some awesome opportunities. The work study in particular, because I got to work in labs that otherwise wouldn't have been afforded a full wage. Because work study, you know, they only pay for you like a quarter of your wage, and your grant pays for the rest of your wage. But I think, you know, looking back, like I could have afforded a summer, you know, or a semester somewhere with student loans and or something like that. You know, I just thought, I think it was I felt like I was poor, you know, and therefore couldn't do that.
Yeah, I agree with Tim that I guess my biggest regret was that I did not study abroad, and I just wasn't ready. I mean, I'll be honest, like I don't think that I felt confident enough in myself to go to a completely foreign country. In agriculture, a lot of places of where I would have been going are Latin America or Africa. And I just was very scared to be that far away from my family. And I didn't know how I was going to pay for that, how I was going to maintain connections. It scared me. I'll be honest. And then but I do think that if I went to the same institution for my undergraduate degree and for my master's degree. And so that really was a great just learning opportunity for me, because I will be very candid and honest. My first semester of graduate school, this is kind of going back to what Sarah was talking about choosing the right advisor or the right program. I went into an agricultural education program for my master's degree, and I love it. It was perfect for me. But my first semester, I was on an assistantship in a lab that was basically an entomology lab. I loved being on the farm. I hated being in the lab. And so that just totally crushed my spirit in a way. And so I was terminated. Uh, but it was probably for the best, honestly, because I was going to quit. Like before I went to the next semester, I wasn't renewing that relationship. So I kind of just had to figure it out. Like, okay, this is not working, and I can tell that it's not working. And the professor basically just beat me to the so the next semester, like I had a semester where I wasn't really focused on work or anything. So I really could focus on my classes and focus on what things I was most interested in. And then the next semester, I actually was picked up by another program, which was more of a mix of biological engineering and agricultural education and curriculum development and working with people and kind of bringing all of those concepts that I was really interested in. So, just because you get terminated or lose your funding or whatever, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. It teaches you how to be resilient, honestly. So yeah, I definitely would have studied abroad and yeah, tried not to get terminated.
I wish I would have been kinder with myself. I also went directly from my undergrad to my master's, and I guess being kinder with myself and also maybe like informing myself a little bit better about the grad school program, the grad school advisor. My master's was so challenging for me. It was so difficult. It was a traumatic experience in my life that after I was abandoned by my master's advisor, and then I had to find another one, and I was running out of funding. My experiments weren't working. It was just like a traumatic experience to the point where I ended up graduating from my master's, and then I decided that this, research was not for me. And then I had like multiple different jobs for the following 3 years. And then eventually I decided that I wanted to go back to grad school to pursue a PhD. And the reason why I say that I wish I would have been kinder with me, it's because I guess I'm not, as a my parents were working all the time. They never had time for, for anything. So I guess like in a way I grew up not knowing how to reach out and not knowing how to ask any questions. I was always by myself. I was an only child for 10 years. So when I started grad school, that was the approach that I had. Because that was my approach to life. You just like do everything by yourself. You figure it out. You don't ask questions. So it was very, very challenging for those reasons. So definitely, if I could go back, I would definitely be kinder to myself and be like, hey, Adriana, it's okay if you don't understand. It's okay if you ask questions. It's okay if this is not working. Reach out. Those are things that would have made it. It would have made my years in my master's far less stressful.
Those are all amazing responses. I want to take a minute to address some of these issues. If you're here to learn about careers in research science, graduate school is one of those steps that you would need. It makes it a lot easier to prove to your, future career path that, you understand and, can apply the scientific method to your questions, to your curiosity. But it's also one of the hardest decisions that people really don't fully understand before they take it. As a person that has had interactions with thousands of students, it's one of the hardest decisions that you'll ever make. It makes or breaks you as a scientist. When picking a graduate program, it's not only about the program, but the advisor, the person that you have an intimate relationship with as a mentor in your field, changes who you are as a person, changes who you are as a scientist. It is a relationship. It is a relationship that as a personal relationship, you should not take lightly. It is a relationship that you need to put everything on the line and figure out if it's right for you, if that's the right fit. And as you've heard from our panelists, not having that right fit it's a harder path, and it doesn't have to be. And we want the future of our science. We want our scientists to make it easier for the next generation, not harder. Not because they had it harder, they're not going to make it harder for the next generation. We want it to make that transition easier. We want it to be welcoming. We want it to be, diverse and representative of what our science is, the most diverse of all sciences. And so I just wanted to take a minute and say that, like, if you're considering grad school, if you're a senior, and that's your next path, take more time, interview the students to find out what the relationship with your advisor is. Is there somebody that's going to be overbearing and kind of umbrella over you, or is it somebody that's never there because they're extremely busy? These are all questions that you should be asking and considering when applying for graduate school. The other thing that I wanted to transition on to the next question, and Jeremy's been hinting at, the windy path throughout each of our careers. Michelle actually just mentioned, one of her facts of losing a job. And I think I don't want to skip the questions in the chat, but one of our own SEEDS alum, Miroslava, posted a question that's extremely important. And with each of your new positions, jobs, roles, that you've had, when did you know that it was time to move on? And I think that the level of maturity that comes with that decision is something that is an extremely steep learning curve for everyone as a, early career.
Hey, Fred, ask that question one more time, please.
So with each of the new positions or roles that you've had in the past, when did you know that it was time to move on? And it's not a question that maybe everyone on the panel, can answer. But those that have had that experience, can you address that when, like, the maturity level that comes around, like, this is not right for me right now, so I'm gonna venture. I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, two things for me: realizing that family was more important than anything. That, and a couple years ago during that historic government shutdown, I ended up in the unemployment office as a government employee because I was furloughed and getting denied unemployment. And here we live the American dream and, go to school and do good things. And here I am in the unemployment office because the geniuses, and, well, not to go there, but, they couldn't get their act together. And so that was when I took a step back and was like, man, I need to get back into nonprofit world. And then I picked up my faith and resigned and took a part-time job here or there. And then I stumbled across in the middle of the night that position at Open Lands where I'm at now, just by accident. Like one of those, you wake up in the middle of the night and you just have nothing else to do and you're kind of glued to your phone, a TV, or a computer. So I don't recommend that, by the way, but but it's one of the things that it kind of paid off at the end. Yeah, just trust your gut, I guess. Trust your gut. Talk to others. Talk to friends. Talk to family, and use them as a sounding board, because it's not an easy decision to make, particularly in today's age when finding a job can be so intimidating and challenging. Well, at least for me. Yeah, that's all I have. Great question. I love that question, Fred.
It wasn't me. Thank Miroslava.
I knew it was time to. I was, as I said before, I was a professor at a nearby college, and I never thought about leaving academia for consulting, but I was looking for a different position because I knew that I was never going to be able to steer that iceberg of a university with my outward motor. that I had available. It was not ever going to be the kind of position I thought I thought I would be able to shape it into, do the kinds of things that I wanted to do, due to just the inertia of the having to get faculty agreements and the structures of the university. And what was really the death knell was when I applied for early promotion, because I had some great grants and was doing a lot of great stuff with undergraduate research, but I was denied because I didn't quite fit the mold that they were expecting in terms of the balance of teaching and research. So it was one of those things where it's sad. I was told when I started that I could shape it to emphasize, more student research as opposed to just, teaching classes back to back. But in reality, when coming up to being evaluated for promotion by outside committees, they didn't value that. And so I was like, well, if they don't value me, I'm not going to stick around here. I ended up getting a recruitment letter from the company I'm working for right now, which was I invited some folks to come in and talk to my class about potential ecology careers. And a few months after that, I got a letter asking if I happen to know any senior level ecologists who would be looking for a position at their Pittsburgh-based firm. And I was like, I think I know just the person. And it was a real big shift because I had never thought about going into the private sector before. But what I was able to do is actually, I work with a lot of early career ecologists still. They just happen to have recently finished their bachelor's and they work for our company now. I get to work with interns. So it's almost kind of like the best part of working with students. And I don't have to grade quizzes. I don't have pointless faculty meetings. And this is kind of veering off to a question about the unexpected that some people have addressed in the chat. Is I didn't really think about the business because now I'm a business person, right? So many people in academia are in business too. It's like grant proposals, right? So you've got to fund your projects. We have to fund our projects too, but it's a different mode. Like you're meeting with potential clients and you're kind of schmoozing and it's like this salesperson aspect that I don't really like. What I do like is interacting with folks who are trying to do cool ecological projects, and then you find an opportunity to work together, and that's great. And just trying to figure out how to work in this business environment is weird. And then also like wanting to do projects that being too expensive. So because it is business, that the business is there to make money, and it's not to do the really cool project that Tim thinks would be a really great project. It's like, that's great. Can you make money doing that? So that's a balance that's difficult sometimes.
Can you repeat the question again, Fred? I know I talked about my termination, but
So those moments in your life when you knew that it was right to move on, or in your case, somebody told you that you needed to move on.
right. I got the boot. So
you're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes that will happen. I will also say that I knew that it was time to move on from some other positions because of a toxic environment. Being in my position and even in my career field as a Black woman I experienced a lot of have experienced a lot of microaggressions in the workplace, and it has, stunted my creativity and like made my work performance just in the toilet. So, you get to a point where, hey, I'm fed up with this stuff too. So you know your worth and add tax. That was something that I've heard many, many times. You're not going to be able to add too much tax because you're still in the science world. But definitely know your worth, and know that don't be so concerned or kind of fixated on this is the only position out there, because there's so many positions out here that you may stumble upon. The position I'm in now, someone sent to me, and a lot of opportunities, the same way that Tim just said, like, I could probably apply for this. Almost all of my jobs have been like that. Even if I got to a point where I left, it's always been, I walked through a door that was already open for me. So.
Something that I'd like to mention, clearly I didn't move on from the academic path because I'm an assistant professor now, but something that it's worth mentioning, and that it's something that I struggle with, is that in order to like move from your master's to your PhD, to your postdoc, to your next postdoc, to your assistant professor position, and then if you want to move to another institution, is that you have to move around a lot. And that moving itself is very tiring and it's very expensive too. And usually no one pays for the moving. No one had ever paid for the moves until I started my position that I have right now. And it's not only about the tiring and the moving, it's also about, leaving your entire community of people from the place where you previously lived. And then if you're in a relationship, then you need to think about that too. I've been very lucky that my now husband has been following me since my undergrad all the way to my position right now. But even though I've been very lucky in that way, it's been a very lonely road. Just like, again, moving from one place to another, it takes a really long time to make friends. And then when you eventually make them, you have to move. And then as you start to move up, people are so busy that even making friends becomes like an issue. It's difficult. And now with the pandemic, it's even worse. So it is, something to consider if this is what it may not be what you want, I guess. It's really challenging. It's something that I struggle with. Aside from, academia is also, especially in the sciences, is a white dominated space. And I do too constantly suffer microaggressions and other ways that, people attempt to invalidate my science and my existence. So it's really emotionally draining.
Thank you for sharing, Adriana. I think that those are all very important points. That was a great question to answer. I'll take a little stab at it myself. I tried the graduate route straight out of undergrad, and then after a year and a half in a master's degree, my funding was cut, as in kaput, as of tomorrow, nothing. And I hated science for it. I was like, wait, is this how science is? Like, they could just cut it like that? And like, I'm left hanging. Wait, what? All the work that I put into, getting my data for this master's, it just, nothing out the door. And I left science. And I didn't want anything to do with science after like 6 years of really wanting to be, part of science. And unknowingly, every single step that I took after that, which was not related to science, made me be prepared for the position that I hold now that's definitely in science. So even in those moments where you're like at your most discouraged, and I had, the only panic attack I've ever had in my life was working in marketing, and I just hated it. But everything that I did, every decision that I'd made basically prepped me for what I'm doing now. And the one that I want to share now is I've been doing what I'm doing for just 9 years last week, turned 9 years. So I've been doing it for a decade. And I work so closely with undergraduate students that the older I get, the harder it is for me to connect. So I know that I need to move on. I know that these reins need to be passed on to somebody that can connect better with, a younger generation than me. And so that's what's like forcing me then to search for, my next career path. It's hard because I was a SEEDS student myself. I feel very fortunate that I get to manage the program. And the next step, whatever it may be, I know that I'll give it. And if it doesn't work out, I'll try something else. So that's, never be discouraged about those moments in your life where you think like, oh, is this it? Not really. And again, it goes to those like windy roads as a career path. So that's really important. Now, part of what I do is a lot of mentoring. So I want to jump into this question, and that is, how important it is for you in your career path and your career decisions as a scientist, having a good or a bad mentor? They both exist. How mentoring changed you?
Oh my gosh, mentors are, I think, Fred, I think you know most of my mentors too, or my favorite mentors.
I won't tell them. It's just a recording this, don't worry.
Yeah, it's just a recording. It's not like we could send it to him or anything. But I would not have finished my degree without one of my mentors. She literally changed the trajectory of my career. She is the reason that I wanted to be an ecologist in Washington, D.C., working on science policy. She gave me a chance to work with her for one summer during grad school, which cemented that that was the thing I wanted to do. And then when it came to actually finishing my degree and figuring out how to navigate all of the bureaucracy of a university, my advisor was not supportive and was not helpful and was very much an obstacle. And it was having her, and she was a faculty at the time. She's still in academia. Having her knowledge of how universities work is the only way I could navigate the system. As you know, as somebody who wasn't, first generation, I went to a small liberal arts college for my undergrad. In grad school, that was my only experience, like exposure to university and figuring out the system. And without a guide to help you through when you have to use some of those lesser used levers of the system, it's almost impossible to know. And so I would not have gotten a degree without one of my mentors, and I wouldn't have my current job because of one of my other mentors. And so another mentor of mine, he literally wrote the job description of the job I have. And so I would not have this job without him. And so it's not people who officially, it's usually not official titles. It's people you meet, you build rapport with, you have things in common with, you work together on different things, and you just continue those relationships. And it wasn't like I would email these people every week or every month, but it was, when we did meet at ESA, we would always connect, or, if something exciting happened, I would always share it with them. It was, it's building that relationship over time. And these people came to my wedding. They're incredibly important people professionally and personally, and I think that's what can really make a really important mentor. And good mentors are life-changing, and mentors are not advisors. Those are different jobs. I love mentors.
I think the mentoring on how to, like you were just saying, Sarah, your mentors are not necessarily advisors. I feel like all of my advisors, my master's advisor, my undergraduate advisor, my master's advisor, my PhD advisor were such different people than I was, or I am, whatever. And so I had my most important mentor was Martin Caldwell. It was a very prominent scientist. He was on the Montreal Protocol for the ozone hole and all of that kind of stuff. And how he is basically my gay mentor. So so I just came out to all of you guys. So I'm gay, and that was a big thing. Like, how can you be, how does that aspect of my life fit in with a professional life? And he was, out and gay and this very prominent scientist. And I basically just asked him, it was very awkward, like, can you be my mentor? He wasn't on my committee, he wasn't, but he was a, ecology professor. So, and, we stayed in touch for many, many years. It was a very important role because he wasn't like, I think oftentimes mentors are kind of on the side of your career, like they're helping you, push you along, like, arm in arm, as opposed to push you along like this, or drag you along, right? They're helping you, guide you along, I guess is the idea.
Yeah, with me, it's been really interesting. And I guess mentors for me relate to what Sarah just added in the chat. And that is that I don't have one mentor or two mentors, and I don't really identify a person that I can go to talk about whatever. No, If I have, if I have a question about leadership or I want advice about leadership, then I'll ask one, a person that I now think of them as a mentor. But because of the word mentoring and the way that it was presented to me for a really long time, I don't think that a single one of my mentors fit that description. But I'm not really like, oh, I've never had, I don't know how to explain it. I've never had someone to guide me throughout my career. So it's been like me reaching out to a lot of people to ask different questions and then get their advice. So now I know that if I need something, this is the person I can ask. If I need this other thing, then this other person. And I now have a network of people that I go to for different things. So it's been interesting to me up to now when people say like, oh, like who's your mentor? I'm like, that's interesting. I don't really have one. I have many different people, and I guess like they are my mentors, even though I didn't really think of them as my mentors in the strict sense. So yeah, I have a network of people that have been very important for me in just like, helping me figuring out the system, if that makes sense.
Adriana, I actually want to interrupt and ask you a follow-up question. Do you consider yourself a mentor to your students?
I guess I would like to think of myself as a mentor to my students, but I'm also kind of like, I make myself available. So if you have any questions, reach out. I don't think I've ever like held the hand of any of my students, but I do different things that, mentors do, like, let them know of opportunities, let them know that I'm there for them if they ever need anything. So in that sense, I do think of myself as a mentor. I don't really know if they think of myself as a mentor.
I like what you just said, Fred. I do want to say that if you don't have a mentor, oftentimes you'll find yourself in the role of reverse mentoring, especially when you get into some of these jobs or positions where you're the youngest person in the room, or you're the only person who's maybe bringing a different side of depth to the team. And so you're still very valuable to whatever that role is. I know I'm experiencing that a lot in my job. I have a very similar experience to Adriana. I can't really say like this one person shaped everything about, no, I can't say that. But I can say that, hey, I know that I can go to someone at ESA. I know that I can go to someone at University of Maryland. I know that I can go to someone, at North Carolina A&T. Like, so I have mentors all over the place, but it's more so having a network of all these different people to kind of make those connections and just bounce ideas off of them. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy the reverse mentoring because it's a really nice opportunity for me to see different perspectives. I would say my division chief right now is definitely a mentor to me because working in local government was a shift for me. I was working in academia before, but I needed help on trying to understand the political stuff that happens at a local government agency, the bureaucracy, the red tape, all of that. I had no idea how that worked. So, I think that people come into your life or you find the people for the specific skill set or specific need at that time. And so it really is, I don't want to say it's all serendipitous and just, oh, it's going to follow this guy, but you can always seek those people out too. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone that you find on LinkedIn or, on I don't want to say Facebook, LinkedIn. I'll stick to LinkedIn. But if you find these people and they have a skill set or a background, or they attended an institution or did a program that you're interested in, reach out to them because you never know. They may be that mentor that you're looking for, or they may say your name in a room that you haven't even walked into yet. So, and same way that Fred knows all of us on this panel, like we've all seen each other in different capacities, you know, throughout our careers. And so that just builds our network to say, oh, I know this fantastic person who can talk about mentoring, or this fantastic person that can talk about diversity programs or ecology or whatever. It's all building your network for whatever future opportunity you're going to have.
Those are all amazing responses, and thank you for sharing. I have to say, as a person that runs a mentorship program, mentors are pretty important, and the good ones are the best. Like Sarah, my undergraduate mentor was also invited to my wedding, and I was very happy to see him there as somebody that shaped me as a scientist and who I wanted to be in the future, showed me how to behave like a scientist and how to behave like a professional, and that kind of, it gave me a lot of value as a student. And Michelle, you and I are kind of in sync. You're responding and like leading me on to the next question, which is super awesome because we share that connection. I'm gonna like continue on the conversation then about being an imposter, about the imposter syndrome. I think that is something that every single underrepresented group feels when they're in a position of feeling valued, of being either the youngest or the only minority in a group. I think we've all found ourselves in those positions. And the fact of being valued, the knowledge that you bring has a value to it and that your voice should be heard. I think that is one of the most, amazing things that you can learn in your career, is to, know when to stop people and be like, hey, listen to what I'm saying. I know what I'm talking about. And that is something that we've all had experiences for in one way or another. So can you share with our participants that feeling of imposter syndrome and how you've overcome it throughout your career? Or if you haven't, that's also like, it's a thing.
Okay, I'll dive into the deep end here. Imposter syndrome, I think, is something, at least for me, that it still doesn't go away. It isn't something, it's something that, I fall back on, the things that I've done and the things I've accomplished to remind myself continuously that, no, you deserve to be here. You've earned the ability to be here. You are a scientist, you are an ecologist. And I hate that I rely on the papers that say that, because that's not exactly what makes an ecologist. It's the ability to use the scientific method to understand data and to use data to infer conclusions and be able to explain that. But it's very much real. Being in federal government, there's one other person on one other person right now on my staff younger than me by like a year. And I'm in my 30s. And so I'm very often the youngest, the only female in a lot of conversations, and in conversations where I need to make my point heard. And it's hard. It's really hard to confront that all the time. But and sometimes I don't. Sometimes, especially these days, it's a lot easier just to stay on mute some days. It can be really hard. But I think it's really important that we try to put our voices in the room as much as possible. And I also try to remind myself to create space for the voices that aren't sure about coming into the room. But that doesn't always happen. And so I don't have any answers. Just saying that this is real. So I'll leave it at that. I hope somebody else can say some more.
Yeah, I can speak to this a lot. I think that I've been in a lot of different roles, and I guess like at my age, it's weird because I always feel that I should be more qualified, or not more qualified, but I should be able to apply for a job that says we want 7 to 10 years of experience, even though I've only been working like 5. So, that part is a little bit challenging, but I think one way that I deal with imposter syndrome is that I am the only person in my role at my job. I do not have a counterpart. I am the only HBCU graduate. I'm the only woman. I'm the only Black woman manager in the arboriculture section. And so I really take pride in that. And just like I'm sure many of you take pride in other ways that you kind of create identity for yourself. And so for me, that empowers me to go into a room to know that I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've hit a lot of brick walls, and especially in my current role. My role is to identify new and existing land for community gardens. So I'm always hitting park managers that don't want to maintain a community garden, or hitting a landscape architect that says we don't have the money for that, or whatever. And so knowing that I'm the expert in community gardens, and knowing that I know what I'm talking about, knowing that I've seen plenty of examples and I can show you the examples of how things will work and how it makes sense. There's a little bit of a sales pitch there, but it really creates a foundation for me that allows me to walk into rooms and set the temperature. I don't walk into rooms, small. I don't shrink myself, because shrinking myself basically says that, oh, I am a fraud. I am an imposter. I don't know what I'm talking about. So I just take up space, and I'm not afraid to take up space. It may take a while to build up to that confidence, but I have been in a lot of rooms where I have not been able to take up space the way that I can now. And it's empowering and it's inspiring to other people in the room. So, and once you command attention, people will get in line. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
It's very difficult, at least for me. Imposter syndrome sort of like sneaks in probably every day in different ways. And I also don't have an answer for how to deal with it. To me, in the past, imposter syndrome has taken me, like I overcompensate, because I'm usually also the only in many different situations. Like right now, I am the youngest person in my department in terms of age, even though I'm in my late 30s, and also in terms of career stage. I'm also, actually, I'm not the only one. There's another woman of color, but there's only two of us. So I feel like I'm scrutinized a lot, the things that I do, not in my department, but just in general, as a scientist. Like English is not my first language. So then I've spent a lot of time like trying to lose my accent, especially during presentations. I code switch a lot when I'm in this like white dominated spaces and those sorts of things. So I tend to overcompensate because I feel like an imposter. And I guess to sort of like overcome that, sometimes I do kind of like what Michelle said, just I did this, like, this is my work. And, I am proud of this and I take up space. If you don't like it, then that's your problem. That is challenging for me sometimes, especially now that, academia is so hierarchical and there's, like Tim said, there's just like so many things that it's complicated. So it is difficult for me to do that, but I'm learning to do it. And, just like you hired me, now I'm going to bring my entire self into this room because that's how it is. So, this is my work. These are my ideas. This is my voice, and this is how it is. And that doesn't mean that imposter syndrome goes away, but it makes it more manageable, if that makes sense.
Awesome advice. Jeremy, Tim, care to take a stab at that?
No, I think all my points were kind of captured. Yeah, kind of long-winded and intertwined in some of my previous comments, but yeah, so I have nothing further.
I was at a, I'm currently still working on this project. It's a project having in a local park. Most areas in the eastern United States have way too many deer. And the deer had, it was one of those examples of reading the forest and figuring out, you know, based on my experience, like what's wrong with this forest. And this forest is super wrong in such a weird way. It's so barren in the understory. And it turned out that it was a combination of too high deer density and invasive earthworms that basically ate the soil and caused, you know, it to all wash downhill and into the sewer system and causing lots of problems with stream instability. And it was like this ecological meltdown. So I'm having to talk to this city council person where the park, she was both my city council person and the park that I was working in. And, you know, she's saying deer aren't the problem. She feeds deer in her backyard and all this kind of, you know, thing, and how deer aren't the problem and how I don't know anything about deer. And I'm like, I am one of the world's leading experts on the effect of deer on forest vegetation. And I felt like that was a little hyperbole, but I'm like, here's my 6 papers that I just on the very topic in ecological monographs, in restoration ecology, in, you know, journal of ecology, and, you know, and I'm like, no, I really am, you know, one of the leading experts in the world on this exact topic. That kind of someone who was much better at in the kind of public realm of public policy realm from this Parks Conservancy was able to sort of like massage that method in a way that could be better received by this council person. And so, but that, I guess that would be an example of where I felt myself getting beaten down by someone who was so hyper confident in themselves, as politicians often are, and like basically asserting like, no, I really know what I'm talking about here.
Awesome. All amazing responses. It's, you know, code switching. For me, it's an interesting thing as a white passing Latino that doesn't have an accent when he speaks either of my both languages. You know, it's interesting. It's easy for me to code switch. I presented myself as Fred Abbott, yet my name is Frederic. You know, Fred is easier. If I want to pass white, I pass white. If I want to be Latino, I can Latino it as much as reggaeton lets me Latino it. So these are things that like you struggle with, and you will struggle with your identity and who you are and what culture you represent. That is just part of you and who you present yourself to be for the rest of your life, not just your career. So these are all things that, you know, we all struggle with at each stage, as a student, as a young professional, as, you know, a leading world-renowned scientist. You know, it's going to be part of you for the rest of your life because that is who you are. And it's very important for students and, you know, a younger generation to understand that these are some of the steps. If this is the first time you're listening to it, then, you know, take it as a stride. And if not, remind yourself of your worth, and who you are makes you unique, and it makes you unique to what you do for the rest of your life. So these are all important values that you must remind yourself of. We are running out of time, which I hate to do with such an engaging conversation and such an engaging panel. But for the last question of this series, what advice would you give or would have liked to receive going into each of your career paths currently?
I go. Mainly, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, because ultimately it would make one more well-rounded at the end. And yeah, just I can't hit on this enough, is there's no such thing as a dumb question. Even as we get in these higher level positions, like I'm still in meetings and in board meetings and stuff like that, where I might be hesitant to ask a question. And then you find out that like everybody else had the same question that you asked. And so be assertive, be confident, yeah, that's it.
I think my piece of advice would be just take the next best step. You don't need to have a full plan. You know, it's good to know kind of things you're interested in, things you like, things you don't like. Pay attention to those. But just, you know, don't worry about, you know, having it. It's not an end. It's just going to be one step, and then there'll be another, and there'll be another, and there'll be another. So just take the next best one that you can. And if it turns out that wasn't as good as you thought it would be, just take another one, and keep going. Who knows where, you know, I have to admit, every step of the way, I didn't know what step would be next. And so far, so good. But I'm also at a point where it's like, ooh, what might be the next one? So.
I would say that there's no rush. I mean, it seems like things are fleeting and a lot is happening, but really there's nothing wrong with taking time. And even if you're feeling that you're on this lengthy trajectory already, it's okay to take your time. I mean, I think even like right now with COVID and everything, that's something that I'm just constantly reminded of. Like, you can slow down. It's okay. Yeah, because I probably would have done like a 5th year in undergrad, and then, you know, probably done a lot more if I wasn't so focused on I need to finish at this year, this time, this, you know. So just take your time. It's okay to ask all the questions you want. It's okay to explore. It's okay to change your mind. But take your time. Take your time.
I would say that's that's very closely related to what I was going to say, which is, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone just based on what your background is, or what you're used to, or what your parents expect. And, you know, when I was a professor, I had so many students who said, you know, their parents wouldn't let them change their major because, you know, they had to stick to it. Because, you know, like, did your parents go to college? Like, no. Because part of college is learning what else is available to you, right? What are the options? Most people do not know what all the options are when they go to college, especially if your parents didn't go to college, or you didn't know, you know, a lot of people that went to college. So that's just one example. But another example is, get that summer job, or that volunteer experience, or that paying experience, even better, even if it pays a little less than you could work at. You know, I had a student who felt like he couldn't work for me in the summer because he had to work at the factory where his dad worked, and where he got him a job where he did make more money, but he also didn't have the experience. You know, I paid more than minimum wage, and, you know, and it would have been an awesome experience living in the national forest in the log cabin, but whatever. So, you know, really try to step a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and understand that you need that job experience to take you to the next level, because the job experience in ecology is going to be 10 times more valuable on your application to whatever comes next than the other job experience, working, you know, at the gas station or at a restaurant, those are great jobs. They pay the bills, but sometimes, you know, try to get that job that is in the field.
Great advice. I guess my advice would be to, as much as you can, do not compare yourself to others. You are your own person. You have your own history, your own background, your own path, and that's fine. Comparing yourself to others, especially because we tend to compare to those that we perceive as better than us can take you into a very dark place. So do not compare yourself to others. Just do what you want to do. Just follow, you know, your calling or whatever. Just do your thing and focus on yourself without comparing yourself to others too much. Sometimes it's unavoidable, and we naturally as humans tend to compare ourselves to others a lot. But don't let that bring you down, if that makes sense. So there's always going to be people better than you, and there's always going to be people with like tons of achievements, and then you may feel like you're not enough because you're not comparable to them, but that doesn't make any sense. So just don't compare yourself to others. There's really nothing good comes out of comparing yourself to others, especially to those that, again, you perceive as better as you.
Those were all amazing responses. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of you, my colleagues, for joining us tonight, for sharing your stories, for sharing your personal experiences and perspectives. I hope that for those of you that are participating, that this has been as value to you as it's been to us. I am extremely proud to have such an amazing group of people that I get to work with and network with and call upon to provide these experiences for students as well. So to Sarah, Tim, Michelle, Adriana, and Jeremy, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to me and to my community on what you do and what you shared. I just wanted to take a minute and think about where the future of ecology is leading. And I actually spend a lot of my time thinking of that with educating, you know, the next generation of scientists. And for those of you that came looking at those little tips and tricks, we didn't dive too much into that. I wanted you to listen to the stories of a diverse panel that are extremely important for you to listen and hopefully identify yourself with. But in the meantime, the future of our science isn't about finding your niche and finding, you know, you be the expert in this small group of, you know, this little ecosystem and this group of animals in that ecosystem. The future of science is really just as our science, is the interactions with our science and everything else around us. The future of our science is in science communication. It's in policy. It's in getting to get the business side of the environment. We fail to give value to nature as nature is intended to be. We look for value on extracting nature for our gain, yet nature in itself is extremely valuable, and maintaining those ecosystems are extremely valuable to all of us as an organism, as the largest group of mammals on Earth. It's really important for us to not lose track of who we are and what we are on this rock going around the sun. And, you know, it's an interesting career path for those of you that want to be ecologists. It can be very doom and gloom when looking at the news outlets and figuring out what the next big thing, and oh my God, are we going to find a solution to that? We might not, but every day we work hard to make, as Jeremy said, hopefully leave it a little better for the next generation. And that in itself is of value. It makes doing what we do worth it every single day. The value of, you know, humans have been on Earth 300,000 years. Will we be here in the next 300,000? I don't know. It's not going to be up to me. It's going to be up to you and the generation that follows you. So with that being said, hopefully you understand what the SEEDS program is, what we hope to accomplish, what our colleagues want us to accomplish. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me, my colleagues, my family, my professional family, my friends tonight, and listening to their stories. So again, Sarah, Tim, Michelle, Adriana, and Jeremy, and Esberry. Without her help, this wouldn't have happened either. I just wanted to give everybody the shout out that you deserve. And thank you once again. For those of you that are interested in sharing this experience with your classmates, with your colleagues, your peers, we're going to be posting this on the ESA YouTube channel. We'll share the link with those that have registered for the event. So please feel free to share this experience with others. hopefully they will learn, as you have learned tonight, a little bit, just one take-home message. That's all it takes for you to understand and get value out of this event. And we look forward to hosting more events. We're not traveling and not meeting people in person, even though that's like what I love to do, interacting face to face. But the virtual realm is a challenge and an opportunity in itself. And, you know, hopefully you got a little bit of that tonight. So with that, thank you all once again. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions about the SEEDS program, feel free to contact us. You can follow us on social media. You can email me or Esbury. It's fred@esa.org, esbury@esa.org. Or if you want us to both get the message, just send it to seeds@esa.org. And we'll be happy to reply with whatever information that we can provide. Thank you so much for spending an evening with us. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future as a colleague, as a scientist, as an ecologist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, Fred. Bye, everyone.